Welcome to Pub Sports Radio's Ian Cameron Football Frenzy for Thursday, December 17th, as the NFL season continues to come on down the home stretch, Week 15 in the National Football League, as the playoff races heating up in both conferences, wildcard races at stake, division races still in progress right now. Heading into Week 15 action. We'll break down every game on the NFL Week 15 card, as we always do. Welcome into the show. We're here every Thursday, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Pub Sports Radio, Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy. Let's get to it. We're starting with not the most glamorous, not the best Thursday night football game you could ask for, but hey, it's an NFL football game. It's got a point spread. It's got a total. It's going to have some props. It's going to have some opportunities, and that's why it's worth talking about. And that's why any game and every game for that matter, is worth talking about. We've got the Las Vegas Raiders hosting the Los Angeles Chargers. We've got the two teams that basically people screw up where they're playing all the time. People still call the Las Vegas Raiders the Oakland Raiders. People still call the Los Angeles Chargers the San Diego Chargers. So you got the two cities that people still get wrong to this day in action here. We've got Las Vegas, 3.5-point home favorites here, 52 the total in this game. Let's give the Chargers a little round of applause. For as much as I've been really, really harsh, and rightfully so, on Anthony Lynn for bad coaching, bad play calling, bad in-game decision-making, bad game and clock management continues to be a problem for the Chargers. Somehow, some way, we see a bad incident with bad game management and clock management every single week, it seems, right now. From this guy. It happened again last week against Atlanta, but I will give the Chargers a little bit of credit for finding a way to win finally in a close game, which has been obviously a problem for them throughout the course of the season. They found ways to lose. They've not been able to get a drive on offense when they've needed it to win a game. They've not gotten a stop on defense when they've needed it to win a game. And finally, they got that yesterday or last week against the Atlanta Falcons. Now, the Matt Ryan interception was brutal, and it was almost like Atlanta was saying, hey, we don't want to win this game. Here you go, Chargers. Take this football game from us. We clearly don't want to win. And the Chargers took advantage of that. So you give them credit a little bit for that. But can they do it again another game here? Short week going to Las Vegas against the Raiders. But the Raiders have their own problems. Raiders defense continues to be a sore spot. I mean, to see how poorly they played on the defensive side of the football against the Indianapolis Colts on Sunday was really, really awful. So bad that John Gruden had to make the decision to fire his defensive coordinator, Paul Guenther. And he's very close with Paul. They're good friends. He's a respected, fellow colleague and coach among the coaching ranks in the eyes of John Gruden. So to fire him was a big move on his part because, again, they've had a lot of he's worked with Gruden before in the past. It probably wasn't an easy decision, but I actually have to give Gruden credit. It was the right move. You had to make a move of some kind. You either had to fire Guenther now or you had to fire him after the season. But somehow, some way, you couldn't carry on with this defense just regressing and getting seemingly not any better throughout the course of the season. And that continues to be a problem for them. It was definitely the right move. The timing was a little bit strange, and now you're going to be having to prepare and scheme. Rod Marinelli taking over now as the defensive coordinator. He's going to have to really get things ramped up quickly with a short amount of prep time for this game. So we'll have to wait and see what kind of effort we get from the Raiders defense here. We know Las Vegas has been an over machine. I've talked about this on the show throughout the season. 9-3-1 to the over in their 13 games this season. I was on the over with the Raiders and the Colts on Sunday, and it was an easy one. This is a little bit different, though, because the total is even higher than it was on Sunday. Total of the Colts-Raiders game was 51, and this total is right now 53, 52, 53 in that range. And maybe the Raiders defense is just, they don't have the personnel. They don't have the talent. This is not a defense that's going to end up improving regardless of the change at the defensive coordinator spot. Maybe that's just the way it's going to be. But if there's ever going to be a game where the Raiders, hey, defensive coordinator's fired, we need to work harder. We need to be prepared better. We need to be ready to go on defense for at least one singular game where maybe they can step up defensively. Could it be tonight? We'll have to wait and see. So that's what's kind of shying me off the over in this game. It's my lean, but it's not something I'm planning on betting. Maybe you can bet it live in game if it starts slow, but the Raiders defense, not good on paper, not good personnel wise. There's no question. Cleveland Farrell as well, who is one of the few guys that gets consistent pressure on this Raider defense as well. They haven't had a good pass rush all season long. And in fact, getting pressure on quarterbacks seems to be getting worse. And the lack of it is getting worse for this Raiders team on a weekly basis. Cleveland Farrell got injured on Sunday. We'll have to see if he's capable of returning for this game. And if not, that's going to make things a little bit more difficult for Las Vegas on the defensive side of the football here going into this game for sure. They're still without Damon Arnett at cornerback. That's not good. Looks like Farrell is actually out. So there you go. Jeff Heath still injured in the secondary. The good news is it's Josh Jacobs at running back, should be good to go. Henry Ruggs is a huge loss, obviously, at wide receiver. I know he hasn't had maybe that breakout rookie season that we were hoping for out of him, but still, it's another option that Derek Carr is not going to have to be able to throw the football to. We'll have to wait and see. Justin Herbert, I think is a guy that has kind of regressed a little bit the last couple of weeks. Didn't necessarily play great against Atlanta, even though they won that game. And certainly Bill Belichick and the Patriots had his number a couple of weeks ago. We'll have to see if he can bounce back here. I think the Raiders on offense, we'll have to see if they can do some damage here. And the concern for the Chargers going into this game, the last time they played Las Vegas, they were banged up on defense big time. But they have Chris Harris back. They have Joey Bosa back. Those guys actually didn't play for the Chargers in the first meeting head-to-head against the Raiders. So that could make a little bit of a difference here for them in this game tonight on the defensive side of the football. We'll have to wait and see. Again, the run defense, a little bit concerning as well against the Josh Jacobs, who is apparently good to go. They've been vulnerable as well. The linebacking core is banged up for the Chargers. What's that mean? That means from a player props perspective, guys, keep an eye on this. We know how good the tight end for the Raiders has been, Darren Waller. He's had a great season. And you need not only a healthy linebacking core, you need a good linebacking core and a healthy linebacking core to be able to shut down the tight end in the National Football League. And I'm just not sure the Chargers are going to be well equipped to do that tonight. So Darren Waller for sure, touchdown prop, receiving yards, receptions, definitely someone I've targeted in the props market tonight. Again, on Twitter, at Bobano. As always, I will have my player props, my touchdown scorer props, which have really done well. I had never anticipated when I started posting these, I wasn't necessarily sure how they do, but consistently, we're, for the most part, there's some nights we don't, you don't have a great read on the game and your props fall short. But more often than not, I've posted 6 or 7 touchdown scorer props with the primetime games, and I've been able to cash 2 or 3 of them, on most nights. And as long as you do that, and considering most of them are good plus prices, you're going to come out with a profit from that. And even the standard player props like receptions and receiving yards. I mean, I don't think in terms of the regular player props, receiving yards, passing yards, receptions, rushing yards, those kind of props, I swept the board with them with the Ravens-Browns game. Of course, that's going to happen when you have a high-scoring game like that. And even at the touchdown scorer props, we cashed 3 of them out of the 6 or 7 and made a profit with those. So the props have really done well. And Darren Waller, for sure, for the Raiders is someone I would look at here in this game. From a side and total perspective, I would lean to the Raiders here because, for them, it hasn't been pretty lately for them. They lose to Atlanta. They lose to Indy. They barely beat the Jets. I understand that. But do I trust the Chargers going on the road on a short week to win another close game when they really haven't done that much winning close games all season? No, I don't. So there's question marks. And also there's just so many injury concerns really on both of these teams. The Chargers, by the way, Austin Eckler is probably the guy I would consider looking at for the Chargers with him back. Justin Herbert's going to look to him a lot. He's been banged up all season long. Of course, just recently now had the quadricep injury, but he's looking like he's on target to return. I could see him being targeted quite a bit, being involved heavily in this Chargers offense tonight. So Eckler and Waller, Eckler for the Chargers, Darren Waller for the Raiders, probably 2 guys that would absolutely I would be interested in from a prop standpoint in this game. I'm not going to have a bet side or total. I lean slightly to the over, but I don't love it because the Chargers overrun has kind of cooled down the last couple of weeks. The New England game stayed under. The Atlanta game stayed well under the total. And their defense has actually played a little bit better, the Chargers. And the Las Vegas defense hasn't been good. They're not a team I have a rush to bet under the total. But I just think that with the coordinator change happening now, in theory, this is supposed to be a step-up spot, even for a bad defense to play better. Like, play a little bit better on the defensive side after the coordinator change. Sometimes teams do that. Coordinator change, and all of a sudden that unit on the football field plays a little bit better in the first game after the coaching change. So something to keep in mind. For me, it's just a small lean to the Raiders and to the over in this one, but not really a strong opinion on it. I'll be more involved in the props when it comes to Thursday night football with the Chargers and Raiders tonight. All right, let's go to Saturday, I should say. I was going to say Sunday, but I almost forgot that we have two Saturday NFL games, which often happens in the last couple of weeks of December. They put on a Saturday doubleheader, and they've done that here in Week 15 this Saturday, starting with the Buffalo Bills taking on the Denver Broncos. We've got Buffalo 6-point favorites here in the Mile High City, 49 the total in this game. Tricky spot for the Bills. That's the first thing that stands out to anybody, when you look at this football game between the Bills and Broncos, is that for Buffalo, they come off the bye. They beat the Chargers at home. They have the big Monday night game in prime time in Glendale, Arizona against the San Francisco 49ers. Another big game the following week, last Sunday night football on NBC against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Bills win that game. And now you're going on the road to face an out of the playoffs losing Denver team. It's a dubious spot to be laying points with the Bills. There's no question. And let's give Denver credit. You start to look at what the Broncos have done their last few weeks here in the month of December. This is not a team that's folded the tent and gone home this year by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, they're 3-1 against the spread their last 4 games, 2-2 straight up in that span. But you look at their results since November 22nd. They beat Miami outright as home underdogs, 20-13. They hang tough at Kansas City at Arrowhead Stadium a couple of weeks ago on Sunday Night Football, lose 22-16, but cover the number as double digit. Underdogs. They win outright at Carolina last week, 32-27. I thought that was an impressive win because Carolina's rested, fresh. Denver off just a tough loss against Kansas City, considering how well their defense battled in that loss to the Chiefs. I thought maybe they could fall flat against Carolina. That didn't happen. They rise up. They get the win 32-27. Very impressive show of resilience from this Broncos team. And the only ATS loss during their last 4 games was, of course, that 31-3 loss to New Orleans where they didn't have a quarterback that game, where Locke was out, Driscoll was out, Bortles was out. They didn't have a Brett Rippon. None of the quarterbacks for Denver were available in that game, and they had to go with Kendall Hinton at wide receiver, quarterback in his Wake Forest days, had to play the starting quarterback role in that game out of pure desperation. So it's understandable why against an elite New Orleans team, they got clobbered in that game. But other than that, we've seen Denver battle, and maybe if they battle again here, it's good enough. The one issue for Denver is their defense in the second half, particularly last week against Carolina. Thank goodness they kept scoring. And let's give Drew Lock credit. It's been a tough year for Drew Lock. He really hasn't made that progression at quarterback for the Broncos. But Carolina kept scoring. Denver's defense was really struggling to get off the field in the second half. And Denver had to keep scoring to maintain that lead. And Drew Lock and the Broncos did find a way. And KJ Hamler, this is the guy that you want to absolutely target if you're going to look at a Bronco receiver, player props wise, Locke and KJ Hamler are starting to get something going here. He has had a couple of really good games in a row for this Denver team, catching the football. I could see that continuing here against the Bills. Hopefully he's not matched up with Trey White. Trey White's the one cornerback that can erase an opposing receiver on this Bills secondary, but I think they got a little question at the other cornerback spot. They've been basically rotating a bunch of different players at the second cornerback spot on the other side of the field. So hopefully Hamler is matched up against that corner for the Bills in this game, whoever that is. Sean McDermott's changed it on a weekly basis, that rotation. So That's definitely something that would interest me. But let's give Locke credit. He played well. Now, Carolina's defense is not very good. Buffalo's is definitely better. Buffalo had struggles early in the season on defense. Their defense has gotten a lot better the last few weeks, really ever since the bye. Clearly, McDermott focused on the defense during the bye week, because since the bye week, you look at what the Bills have done. Gave up 17 to the Chargers, 24 to San Francisco, but a lot of that was in garbage time, and then 15 to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and only the one touchdown, I believe, for the Steelers in that game as well. Actually, 2 touchdowns. One was the 2-point conversion, but three really good defensive performances in a row from the Bills since they had their bye week. And we'll see if Drew Lock and the Broncos can navigate their way through this Buffalo defense. But this spot is more than dubious enough for the Bills, where I would not want to lay the points with the Bills here. It'd be a small lean to Denver. But again, I'm going to say this, I was going to get to this a minute ago, and the matchup for Denver with their secondary banged up concerns me. They have had injuries in their cornerbacks group for a very long time coming into this season. Boye, Callahan, two of their top cornerbacks. I think they are their top 2 quarterbacks. AJ Boye and Callahan for the Broncos, both of them not likely to play in this game. So that's trouble, because we are seeing on a weekly basis Josh Allen throwing the football with confidence, with accuracy, unlike he's had in previous seasons. And if he can pick apart a very, very suspect, injury-plagued secondary without Bryce Callahan, without AJ Boye, man, that's going to be an issue for this Denver team. When you got to match up with Diggs, you got to match up with Beasley out of the slot. You got to match up with Gabe Davis, who is really coming on for the Bills, the rookie receiver out of Central Florida. That's a lot of duress that I think they could put on this Denver defense, and that's why I'm worried about taking the points with Denver, just because of the spot, which is no doubt in the Broncos' favor. This is not a Bills spot, and I won't be on Buffalo. But this is my hesitation in pulling the trigger on taking Denver here. And let's be honest, Buffalo's still the better team. It's just a question of, do they play their A game? They've had a really, really big game feel type of schedule lately, especially the last 2, 49ers on Monday Night Football, Steelers on Sunday Night Football. And now you go to this game against Denver. That's always the kind of spots in the NFL that trip teams up, especially when they're laying points on the road. But I don't know if this matchup's great for the Broncos. I don't want teams with depleted secondary against this Bills passing attack right now, which is dynamic. It's getting better by the week. I love what I'm seeing out of Josh Allen. They're going to have to get lots of pressure, on Josh Allen to be able to have success. And we just saw the Bills come off a game where they're playing a team in the Pittsburgh Steelers that have one of the better defensive fronts and pass rushes in the NFL, and they really had trouble containing Josh Allen and getting real consistent pressure. And when they did, Josh Allen just got rid of the football quickly and allowed his receivers to make plays, and yards after the catch just burned the Steelers in that game. You worry that, Denver brings that same mindset, aggressive, got to get after him to protect this depleted, injury ravaged secondary. Josh Allen has dealt with that last week. He can probably deal with that again. I'm going to make a case for the over in this game at 49, because I think Drew Lock and the Broncos, I liked what I saw of the offense last week. I know Buffalo's defense has improved, but you get them on the road, especially after the 2 big games. I could see their defense leveling off just a little bit and giving the Broncos a chance to make some plays, put up some points of their own. But I have some real major concerns about Denver's defense with a short-handed secondary against Allen and this Bills passing game. So I think the over could be in play. As always, wait till closer to game time, see what the weather is. Always dicey at this time of year. But over 49 is definitely something that I've got circled for the Bills and the Broncos. We've got Carolina, Green Bay. Green Bay 8.5-point home favorites at Lambeau. This is the Saturday night game, the second of the game of the doubleheader on Saturday night at Lambeau Field. Green Bay laying 8.5, 52 the total in this game. The Carolina Panthers, just more issues on the defensive side of the football for them last week in the game against the Denver Broncos, as we just mentioned, the Broncos, and that's obviously going to be something you worry about. We just saw Drew Lock basically have one of the best games of his career against this Carolina team. how the hell are Carolina going to contain Aaron Rodgers if that's the case? That's the big question going into this game. Packers do have some cluster injuries on the offensive line. That is something you want to be a little bit leery of going into this game. But Carolina's secondary, Bradbury departed in the offseason. It was basically for Matt Rule a rebuild job of sorts for this Panthers defense coming into the season. And they had some glimpses earlier in the season, September and October. They had some games where they hung in there on defense. They played a little bit better than expected. But for the most part, you look at Carolina and their performance on the defensive side of the football this year, it's been really tough. They gave up 34 to Las Vegas, 31 to Tampa Bay. You look at especially lately what that defense has allowed. 33 to Kansas City, 46 to Tampa Bay. I still don't know how they shut out Detroit 20-0, but somehow they did. That's clearly looking like a huge anomaly right now because you got that 20-0 shutout over Detroit for this Carolina defense, sandwiched in between, giving up 33 to KC, 46 to Tampa. And then on the backside of that 20-0 shutout win against Detroit, they gave up 28 to Minnesota and 32 last week to Denver. So that clearly was just a one-game situation for the Panthers where for some reason they were able to get stops on the defensive side of the football. No rhyme or reason for it. It's going to be a lot tougher here against Green Bay. I mean, we know the Packers on offense. It's going to be difficult for most teams to stop them. A weak defense like Carolina going to be trouble. And it's both ways, really, for the Panthers. They've struggled against the pass. They've been ripped apart in the secondary, and they've struggled to stop the run. So, even if they get some pressure on Rodgers, he could hand it off to Aaron Jones or Jamal Williams, and they can have some success running the football as well. On the flip side, Carolina, I'm sick of hearing about Christian McCaffrey at this point. I mean, we thought he was coming back 2 weeks ago. Nope. We thought he was coming back last week. Nope. And now they're saying, hey, he might be back from that thigh injury this week. Well, shut him down at this point, okay? Your team's going nowhere. You're not a playoff team. Keep the guy healthy for a long time because at this point, if you're Carolina and you're the management group, you got to be concerned and you got to think about the guy's long-term viability and future with this team. And because the injuries have been mounting, I don't want to say he's like broken glass at this point, but you are concerned that this guy has not been able to stay completely healthy here on the football field throughout the course of his early NFL career. So I wouldn't bother playing him. But again, Carolina is considering having McCaffrey back here in this game. We'll have to wait and see. Matt Rule's saying that it is potential that they have them back. And the thing that really I think could actually make Carol, as much as I don't think their defense is stopping Green Bay, they could have some success offensively here especially if they get McCaffrey back, because this Packers team, they are still horrendous against the run. And even if it is Mike Davis, again, at running back for the Panthers and Christian McCaffrey's out again, I think they might struggle to stop him too. And Teddy Bridgewater, when he can run when Carolina can run the football, just really opens things up for Teddy Bridgewater being able to throw the football. And I think we could see that here. It looks like DJ Moore, one of Teddy Bridgewater's most counted upon receivers this year. He missed last week, but is expected to return here in this game. So we'll have to wait and see. Obviously, the Packers secondary, Jair Alexander's their best corner, but I don't love the other safeties and cornerbacks necessarily on this Green Bay team. So, it depends on where they put Alexander. They put him on DJ Moore, but you've still got, other guys that can step up and make plays receiving the football for Teddy Bridgewater. I do like this receiving core. I think that's one of the things. Carolina obviously didn't do much to improve their defense, but DJ Moore back, you put him there with Curtis Samuel and Robbie Anderson. You got yourself a nice little receiving core here. I like two angles in this game. Certainly the over, it has to be a consideration here. It's a high number, 51.5, 52 in this game. But you saw Green Bay, Detroit last week, 55 points, 31-24. I think you can get 55 points and 31-24, that kind of final score, which wouldn't surprise me one bit. And I actually do lean to the Carolina side here, plus 8.5. It's a lot of points. We've seen this from Green Bay before, okay? Now when they have a big game and a big win, especially in the division, and then we see them basically next game after that, just do enough to win. Remember, the ugly win they lose to Minnesota. They barely beat Jacksonville. a few weeks ago. Let's not forget that. Green Bay is not immune to these games where they just don't really bring it all together and play their best. And this is, after and the Philadelphia game, they let the Eagles back into that game. And if not for a big Aaron Jones run, 70-yard touchdown run where he broke one to the house, in the final couple minutes, then the Eagles would have snuck through the back door and covered in that game against the Packers. So to me, Carolina, and Teddy Bridgewater is an underdog. We've said this many, many times. You don't want to lay points with Carolina, and we saw that on full display last week against Denver. But taking points with Carolina, much better point spread role for this when backing the Panthers is getting them as an underdog. Look at their track record as a dog this year. They covered against Minnesota as a +3 point dog, lost 28-27. 3-point underdog against Detroit. That was the 20-0 shutout win. 6-point dog against Tampa was the one they didn't cover in. But 10-point dog at Kansas City, they lose by 2. 7-point dog at New Orleans, they lose by 3. 2.5-point dog at Atlanta, they win outright. 3-point dog versus Arizona, they win. 6-point dog at the Chargers, they cover, lose by 5. This has been a good team in the underdog role this year, and Teddy Bridgewater as well, as an underdog in his career, has been really, really solid here for the Panthers going into this one. It's been a tough go for Teddy. It's been a tough go for the Panthers. But to me, 7-1 ATS, by the way, as underdogs for Teddy Bridgewater and the Carolina Panthers. I'm going to look toward taking the points here with Carolina in a spot where I think Green Bay just does enough to win. And I also think there should be some points will go over the total here, sitting at 51.5. All right, on we go to the rest of the NFL card, all of it taking place on Sunday, plus, of course, the Monday nighter as well. Let's start Houston, Indianapolis. Indy, 7.5-point home favorites, 51 the total. In this game, Texans and Colts. Fascinating matchup here. Houston, I don't know what happened to them last week, but obviously that was ugly. To be non-competitive against the Chicago Bears, who had all kinds of issues of their own. I said going into last week, which team was going to respond positively after just gut-wrenching losses the previous week, and it was the Bears. We didn't see any kind of response whatsoever, none, zero, from this Texans team, and that's the concern here. And the Texans defense, look, they got absolutely chewed up and spit out by Mitch Trubisky and the Bears last week. I don't see them having a whole lot of success here against the Colts. Now, I know they held the Colts in check in the last game that these two teams played just a couple of weeks ago. And remember, the Texans were knocking on the door of beating the Colts if they don't fumble at the goal line. Houston's able to win that game probably against the Indianapolis Colts, but that didn't happen. It looks like the good news for the Colts. And another thing, too, is Anthony Costanzo, the left tackle, didn't play in that first game against Houston. He should be ready to go and back on the field for this game against Houston. That makes a huge difference. Look at how good Phillip Rivers is when he's got his offensive line and particularly his blind spot protected. And we absolutely saw that here from the Indianapolis Colts last week in their victory against the Las Vegas Raiders. Just really up and down the field for the Indianapolis Colts against that Las Vegas defense. There's obviously a ton of injuries as well for Houston. This receiving core is absolutely banged up beyond belief. Houston's defense can't stop anybody. So Houston's got to be able to score points to keep up here with Indianapolis going into this game. Brandon Cooks is back. That is huge. He missed last week's game with a neck injury. Having him back is significant. That means he can finally, as much as you appreciate Kiki QT and some of these other receivers that have stepped up, they're not number ones. So to be able to give Brandon Cooks back is significant. They obviously are still going to miss Will Fuller, another one that Deshaun Watson has had a lot of success with this year. But there are some issues here with the Colts going into this game. Darius Leonard, Xavier Rhodes got banged up last week. It's not clear for sure, too, if they're going to play. I mean, they're trying to go through practice this week. Darius Leonard's questionable going into this game. We know how much of a difference. He's maybe the single best defensive player on this Indianapolis Colts team, Darius Leonard. No question about that whatsoever. And Xavier Rhodes also with that knee injury questionable. So you factor in those potential absences for Indianapolis on defense with the fact that the Texans are at least going to have Brandon Cooks back, it looks like, on the field for this game. And I think it absolutely it gives the Texans at least a puncher's chance here to be able to score points. As far as I'm concerned, this number for Indy opened -6.5. It's now -7.5. If you got -6.5, I like that bet. Even at -7, I lean Colts, but I don't know if I want to lay more than 7, in this game, because Deshaun Watson's going to have Cooks back. There could be some injuries to that Colts defense. Rhodes and Leonard would be enormous absences, and the back door could be wide open if that is indeed the case, and they don't play in this game on Sunday. So I would be lean to the Colts, but I certainly got my eye on the over at 51 in this game, especially if we get one or both of Darius Leonard and Xavier Rhodes not playing. The Texans could have David Johnson back. I don't know if that matters at all for the Houston Texans. He hasn't been very good when he's been in there, and he's been banged up all season long. And Indianapolis does do a pretty good job stopping the run, so I'm not sure that's going to make a lot of difference if he comes back. But really, there's a lot of question marks injury-wise on both sides. But I can tell you right now, if the Colts are indeed without Rhodes and or Leonard or both, I would be interested over the total in the Texans versus the Colts. Detroit, Tennessee, there's a lot of question marks here. We've got some books not have a line yet. It was Tennessee opened 8.5. They're 11-point home favorites here, 51.5 the total in this game. Obviously, it's Matt Stafford's health. That's the big question here going into this game against the Titans. Is he going to be healthy? That's the question. They've got all kinds of injuries. Jeff Okudah, that in the secondary, didn't play. Matt Stafford is not likely to play. It looks like the latest on him is the rib injury has made him doubtful for this game. Desmond Trufant in the secondary's out. Kenny Golladay has been dealing with that hip for a very long time. He's not expected to come back. He's still out indefinitely. So it's just a lot of injuries here for this Lions team. And now Matt Stafford not expected to suit up for this game for the Lions, which means it's David Blau time. One more time we get to see David Blau or Chase Daniel. I don't know where Darrell Bevell, the interim coach, is going to go with yet at the quarterback spot, but definitely I would think Chase Daniel has to get the first look here in this game. He's a veteran. It looks like he is going to be the guy that would start here for the Detroit Lions. A guy that at times has played well in just limited duty, but he's not necessarily played as well in the first few the last few starts that he's made, I should say, lately in a starting role. So it's really, really difficult. I'll tell you what, I have cashed with Detroit in 2 straight games since the coaching change. I took them against Chicago, came back to win that game. I took them plus points against Green Bay last week. They scored the late field goal, get them inside that number. They've been competitive. The effort's been solid. The energy level's been high. This team's been trying, and this team, I think, really likes Bevell and his approach. Obviously, anybody's approach is going to be a lot better than Matt Patricia. Who are we kidding? But clearly, it's given them a little bit of an emotional spark, a little energy boost. That could carry over here, and it's still a Tennessee defense that, let's be honest, it's still very suspect. They did play well last week, finally, against Jacksonville. They really made things tough on Mike Glennon, who had his worst game really since being the Jaguars starter. But I don't know if I'd want to, as much as I've cashed with Detroit back-to-back weeks, I don't know if I'd want to go on the road to Tennessee here and back them with Chase Daniel at quarterback, and the injuries mounting even more for the Lions. So I might just take the 2 wins I've had on the Lions and stick them in my pocket and not test the theory one more time here this week against Tennessee. So it's definitely a wait and see for me on that game with the injury situations that are abounding. The Jets and the Rams, we've got the Rams 17.5, 44 the total. The approach last week worked very well. Seattle first half, Seattle full game, got it done against the Jets. I don't think it's crazy to look in that direction again this week against for the LA Rams against the Jets. Rams first half, Rams full game. Definitely makes some sense to me going into this game. Obviously, the Rams had the excellent performance against the New England Patriots on Thursday Night Football last week. Not that Sean McVay, a good coach, needs extra time to prepare against the Jets, but he'll have it here because the Rams played Thursday Night Football last week against New England. What can you say about the Jets? Absolutely brutal performance once again from them against Seattle. Kind of predictable. I said after the game where they blew it against the Raiders late, they had to go on the road, face the Seahawks. I had a feeling they would fall flat in that game, and they sure enough did. 40-3. They get their doors blown off. They get absolutely whipped by the Seattle Seahawks last week in that game. At this point, I don't know if there's anything left in the emotional reserve of this Jets team. It's just the same old, horrendous defense. Sam Darnold not really progressing as a quarterback. Adam Gase not putting him in a position to improve. All of this nonsense of him being able to work well with quarterbacks just hasn't been the case. To me, the LA Rams can probably win this game. Like I say, whenever you play a bad team, the superior team can win the game by however amount of margin they want. It's just a question of how much do they maybe run it up here in this game. It's a really high number, and I know there's going to be people that are just going to say out of principle, I'm going to take plus 18 with any team in the NFL against any other team because there's never that big of a discrepancy from one team to the next in the National Football League. But I saw quit. I saw lay down. I saw quit. I saw we're just giving up last week in that Jets performance against Seattle. And what if things go south? What if they're down 7-0 in the first 2 minutes here, or they're down 14-0 halfway through the first quarter? Do you trust the Jets to keep fighting, keep battling, keep competing after what you saw from them last week, clearly laid down when things got away from them? I sure don't trust them. So for me, it would be Rams first half or Rams full game or nothing at all. This is not a Jets team that I'm putting a penny on probably for the rest of this season. Tampa Bay, Atlanta, we've got the Bucs here, 6-point road favorites, 49.5 the total. Final score is going to look, you know what? Pretty good bounce back game from the Bucs last week, 26-14 win against Minnesota. There's still something not right with Tampa Bay, though. The offense still wasn't phenomenal in that win against the Vikings, not in my opinion. He was awful early in the game, Tom Brady. And he did get better later in the game. But let's not forget, Minnesota's defense was completely riddled with injuries as well in that game. And that's definitely the concern. What's also a concern here for Atlanta trying to defend Tampa is their pass rush has been non-existent. And like with every game that Tampa Bay plays, when they win and cover, they do it against a bad defense or an injury-riddled defense or a defense that lacks a pass rush. Those are the three categories that fall into when do the Bucs and when do Tom Brady do well offensively. And this is probably one of those games that it falls into one of those categories where it's a defense that isn't good, doesn't have a pass rush, and is dealing with some injuries as well. So in theory, this is an offense that Tampa Bay, or defense rather, that Tampa Bay should have success against. So for that reason, I would lean to Tampa Bay. Problem is here, Tampa Bay opened 1.5. Believe it or not, this was Tampa Bay minus 1.5 early in the week. And it's 6 now. It's been a huge move. It's been a massive move toward the Bucs. I agree, but at minus 6, I'm not quite as in love with it. Atlanta, just an unbelievable loss last week against the Chargers because they basically gift wrapped the win for the LA Chargers at the end of that game. Matt Ryan's holding on to the football too long. He's taken too many sacks. His accuracy is not been good lately. He's been missing some throws that are there. The Atlanta offense has been kind of plodding in recent weeks. That's definitely something that concerns me going into this one. Yeah, and Atlanta, the writing's on the wall. Now, they had that initial bump, that initial uptick in energy, in enthusiasm in the first few weeks after Dan Quinn was fired and Raheem Morris took over as the interim coach. That's really starting to wear off now. Tampa Bay's taken a lot of the money, and rightfully so. It's just now getting to the point now, minus 6, where I don't see a lot of value betting them now. Maybe minus 6 would be just a lean for me now at the current number. New England and Miami, we've got the Dolphins, 1.5, 2-point home favorites, 41.5 the total in this one. Fascinating game for sure. Miami definitely last week against the Kansas City Chiefs come back down to earth a little bit. They did come back to get the point spread cover thanks to a last-second field goal courtesy of Jason Sanders. But still very fortunate. They let the game get away from them in the second half. The defense, obviously Patrick Mahomes is capable of doing that against a lot of different teams, and he certainly had success moving the football against the Miami defense last week. Obviously, the Miami Dolphins have some concerns here. You might look at this and say, Miami's only laying 1 to 2 points at home. There's a reason that Miami's only laying this price. They've got cluster injuries with their skill position group and their top playmakers. Look at the guys that got hurt last week. Jakeem Grant, Devontae Parker, Mike Gesicki, who has been a huge target and at tight end for either of the Miami quarterbacks. Ryan Fitzpatrick had great chemistry with Gesicki. Tua Tagovailoa has had great chemistry with Mike Gesicki this season. Well, all three of those guys got injured, and there's no for sure sign that any of them are going to play on Sunday against the Patriots. And that is a big hole to fill for Miami. And then, of course, as we all know, they had a bunch of injuries at running back last week. Their top 3 running backs were out, including Myles Gaskin in the game against Kansas City last week. So this is a real compromised group of skill position talent for the Dolphins caused by injuries. And we're going to have to see who's exactly available for Miami, because you talk about going into your depth chart, you're doing that here in this game with your 3 running backs banged up, Jakeem Grant questionable, Devontae Parker questionable with the hamstring injury, Mike Gesicki as well, doubtful with the shoulder injury. He's actually been downgraded with the shoulder injury to doubtful for this game. So you've got all kinds of key injuries in terms of weapons on offense for Tua going into this game for the Miami Dolphins. That's a concern. And what's also a concern is, didn't we just see Bill Belichick and the Patriots shut down a rookie quarterback 2 weeks ago? Oh, yeah, we did. Justin Herbert and the LA Chargers didn't really get anything going offensively that game against New England. I do think the stat is what it is. It's been brilliant for Bill Belichick in terms of against rookie quarterbacks, his straight up record, his ATS record. I think part of it's a little overrated, but in this particular game, a rookie quarterback in Tua, skill position talent with just, keep multiple wide receivers out, an outstanding emerging tight end and Gesicki out, 3 running backs out. Where the hell is Tua going with the football in this game? That's the question. Who do you run it? Who do you hand it off to? Who do you throw it to? And that's a big time concern I have. And also, Belichick's got the extra time. We talked about this with the Rams earlier. Belichick and the Patriots played last Thursday, so they've got a little bit extra time. The playoffs are a pipe dream at this point for the Patriots, but they are still mathematically alive, barely. They've got to win out and then get everybody in front of them to lose, essentially, which is unlikely to happen. But they're at least mathematically alive. And sometimes when these players in any sport, NFL, NBA, as long as you're mathematically alive, you're going to bring it. You're still going to bring intensity. You're going to bring focus here in this game. I know a lot of people that like New England here. I'm not on New England, but I'm definitely not on Miami. No question. I would lean to the Patriots here a little bit. I just don't know if I think the odds makers have done their job, essentially. Because I think when Miami is fully healthy, taking on this New England team at home, I think they deserve to be at least 4-5 point favorites in this game. Instead, because of all the injuries, they're only 1.5 to 2 point favorites in this game. So the odds makers, to me, have done their job in terms of, adjusting for all the injuries that Miami has on offense, which is it's a laundry list. It's 3 running backs. It's Parker. It's Grant. It's Gesicki. And that's the problem. And we really saw Tua struggle last week. Don't be fooled by, a couple of drives late in the game where Kansas City, I think, kind of fell asleep. And that's the thing. You could say, whoa, Tua got things going in the fourth quarter. Well, hold on now. Kansas City had a huge lead. They got the Saints game next week. Were they already thinking about that game? We've put this Dolphins team to bed. We can take our foot off the gas pedal on defense. They're not coming back when we're already up by the amount of points we were. So you got to factor that in. Don't go nuts saying, wow, Miami found some offense here and got some drives together in that fourth quarter. It's going to be tough to do that here, because the one thing New England has done is be able to have a pretty solid defense throughout the course of the season. Let me bring up New England's defensive numbers and actually see where they stand at. You look at their rushing defense, 4.4 yards per carry allowed, 124 rushing yards per game, 7.2 yards per pass, 219 passing yards per game. And their defense to me against a banged up Miami offense could be able to give them a chance to win this game. So my lean is New England. But again, I think the point spread's been adjusted fairly in that regard. Total's been bet down. I agree. 44 down to 41.5. Again, it's tough for me to go under a total of 41.5 in the NFL. That's a range where you could almost get it over by accident. So I don't love unders at that low of a number. We've got Seattle taking on Washington here. Seattle, 3-point favorites on the road is where they opened. And now they're 5.5 here on the road in this game. 44.5 the total. Seahawks taking on the surging, unbelievable story that is the Washington football team. Great win for them last week against San Francisco. Look, if you were a spot and situational person, a lot of them were on the Niners last week against Washington. Why not? I mean, you came off handing the Steelers their first loss of the season on a weirdly, awkwardly scheduled Monday afternoon football game. And you had to turn around, play in San Francisco Sunday against a Niners team that was, you would think was going to bring full effort, full focus after losing to the Bills on Monday Night Football. It just set up as a really good spot for the Niners and a really tough spot for Washington. Well, spot be damned. Impressive job by the Washington football team to win that game, especially with Alex Smith going down to injury. And we got the Dwayne Haskins show back again for Washington. And that's a show that I would not pay the admission fee for. Dwayne Haskins can't play quarterback right now. That's all there is to it, especially throwing the football. I know he's got some athleticism, but he's just not capable right now of directing an NFL offense as the starting quarterback. I think I saw enough of it with him before he got benched for Kyle Allen. And then, of course, Alex Smith took over for Kyle Allen. And we saw it again, the same old issues, staring down receivers, inaccurate, happy feet in the pocket, not really setting his feet, not really getting – and again, when you don't set your feet, you're not going to be accurate. And that continues to be an issue right now for Dwayne Haskins down the field for this Washington team. So that's going to be the issue here in this game for the Washington football team is, if Alex Smith is not going to be able to go, what is this guy going to be capable of throwing? Because you're not getting Kyle Allen back. That's for sure. And now Alex Smith with the injury that he suffered, that calf injury, he's not practicing today. And that's just word that broke, the last couple hours that he is not practicing today. And when you get into Thursday and you get into Friday and you're not hitting the practice field, put the pieces together, put the puzzle pieces together, and you can pretty much figure out that the status of him playing on Sunday is dicey at best. I don't think he'll be in there, to be honest with you. We'll see if, again, the fact that he's not practicing today, it's starting to make me think this is going to be Dwayne Haskins' start here for Washington in this game against Seattle. He's been working in practice with the first team offense all week. So Ron Rivera is already approaching this like Dwayne Haskins is going to have to be in there in this game for Washington. And I cannot, and I won't back Washington with him at quarterback. I won't. I can't. I won't do it. And that's a shame because I love the coaching in this team. I love the heart, the spirit, the gumption of this team to be able to battle back. You've got just great stories littered all over this team. Alex Smith battling back from, near death, a catastrophic injury that maybe would have almost prevented him from being able to walk again, to get back on the field, not only play football again, but actually put wins on the board for this moribund franchise that has had a dismal run, that's had naming conflicts, and controversy with their ridiculous moron owner, Daniel Snyder. I mean, you go on down the list. What a great, great story Washington's put together this year. Ron Rivera, another guy battling back from near death, cancer scare, having to undergo cancer treatment in the offseason, heading into this season. He's back on the sideline, and to see them rally together, win football games, have a chance to win the NFC East and make the playoffs. It's amazing. It's like a fairy tale story. It's the stuff that you just cannot script. And it's wonderful to think about it. But that doesn't mean I have to put my money down on them on Sunday with Dwayne Haskins at quarterback. Doesn't mean I have to do that. And I'm not going to do that. I mean, you compare Russell Wilson to Dwayne Haskins. Holy mackerel. I mean, what a mismatch at the quarterback position in a league and in a sport where the quarterback play really goes a long way to determining the end result. Yeah, I understand people bet in Seattle. I really do. Their defense clearly has still got some issues. Last week their defense was really good, but I want to put an asterisk beside that because it was the hapless, hopeless, pathetic New York Jets. But nevertheless, I truly believe Seattle's defense is better now than it was in September, better now than it was in October. The question is how much better? And to me, this is a defense that's still good enough, I think, to bottle up Dwayne Haskins here in this one. He had the good first drive, but then he got worse and worse and worse as the game went on against San Francisco last week. And if he's playing, if Smith's in, I'd give Washington maybe some consideration here as a home underdog. But without Alex Smith, and now that it's looking at least a little bit more today than, say, yesterday or earlier in the week, it's looking a little bit more that we might see Dwayne Haskins as the starter. That's definitely a concern. Carlos Dunlap as well, back from injury this week for Seattle. We know the pass rush, as whenever he's been on the field, they've had a pass rush. They didn't have a pass rush before they got him from the Bengals. Remember, this was a team that was, I think, at or near the bottom in the NFL in sacks, pressures, hurries, all those key statistics you look at for evaluating whether a team is getting good pressure on the opposing quarterback. Seattle was at or near the bottom in all those categories early in the season. Then they get Dunlap, and all of a sudden you're seeing them blow up the line of scrimmage. You're starting to see him get in on the quarterback. You're starting to see him get some sacks. So that is big. Another thing is Quinton Dunbar. He was almost about to return last week, but it looks like he might be back as well for the Seahawks going into this game. So those are two huge components of the Seahawks defense that might be back on the field for them in regards to Carlos Dunlap and Quinton Dunbar. So definitely something you want to be. So this could be a fully healthy secondary for the first time since early in the season for Seattle. I think that's significant. Antonio Gibson, I think an under the radar but very important piece to Washington's offense. He didn't practice at all last week. We'll have to see if he's able to come back. He's listed as questionable right now. You look at the skill position talent. As Cam Sims has stepped up, I like what I've seen from him. Terry McLaurin goes without saying. He's had a good year. But boy, question marks as well with your running backs, with Gibson out, Barber questionable. It's J.D. McKissick, and all of a sudden not much else at running back for Washington. So there's just a lot of things that need to be cleared up for Washington here. Seattle is probably going to win this game. It's a question of, do they cover this number? I think if Haskins plays, they probably do have a chance to cover this number. I hate to do it. It's been a great story. They're on a great run. It's obviously an important game. Every game's important for Washington from here on out. But I will not be on Washington if Dwayne Haskins is at quarterback. And in fact, if he isn't, then the -5.5 is probably something I might look toward here with the Seattle Seahawks. We've got Chicago and Minnesota, NFC North matchup next up. Minnesota 3-point favorites here, 47 the total in this game. Lots of money on Chicago, and I can't argue with it. Chicago showed you some life last week against Houston, just dismantling the Texans. And here's the bet I like in this game. I love the over in this game. Chicago, you might say, what are you talking about? Over with the Chicago Bears, and the total's 47. What are you thinking here with the Bears and the Vikings over? First of all, we're indoors at TCF Bank Stadium, or not at US Bank Stadium, I should say, in Minnesota. Weather won't be an issue. And if you've watched the Bears, the Detroit game 2 weeks ago, the Houston game last week, there's a change in offensive philosophy here with Trubisky the last couple weeks. They get a couple first downs, and they're going into warp speed, tempo, and pace, this Bears offense. They've gone a little bit more no huddle. They're trying to get this stagnant, lethargic offense that they've had most of the season going, and they've tried to do it with pace, quickening the pace, getting to the line of scrimmage quickly, and snapping the next play in a hurry. We have seen a dramatic rise in this pace of the Bears offense the last couple weeks, and I'm going to stick with it. I had the over in the Chicago-Houston game last week. That is as painful as it gets. Chicago did everything I could ask for from them offensively, putting up the points they did. Unfortunately, Houston let me down, of all things. I thought for sure the Texans and Deshaun Watson would have been able to put up more points than they did, but they ended up struggling, shooting themselves in the foot when they had chances to put up points. But Minnesota's defense is just a mess. It really is. They're banged up. They haven't been good all season long. I think Mitch Trubisky and the Bears offense, which has started to put up points the last couple of weeks, I think they can keep it going. They found something that works. Darnell Mooney's making plays. Allen Robinson for the Bears. They're starting to run the football a little bit. So positives for the Bears. Look at the last 3 games, in fact. 25 against Green Bay, 30 against Detroit, 36 last week against Houston. So you're seeing this Bears offense come to life. They're playing quick. They're playing with some tempo, which is important. And again, you're not facing a juggernaut defense here in the Minnesota Vikings. Far from it. So I think the Bears offensively can have some success. Minnesota's is not much better. And do they get Eric Kendricks back? And if they don't, he's a significant loss to this Vikings defense. One of the best linebackers, in my opinion, in the league. And without him, you have to put Minnesota's defense, especially if Eric Kendricks doesn't play here, right there with the 2 defenses that Chicago's faced the last couple of weeks, Houston and Detroit. That's how bad Minnesota can be. So I think Chicago's offense is going to have some success here in this game. On the flip side, Dalvin Cook and the Minnesota offense should have some success here. Dalvin Cook ran the football pretty well against Tampa, and Tampa's got a competent run defense going into this game. Bears pretty good at stopping the run as well, but Chicago's defense has not been quite as good the last few weeks. Last week they were, but I think Minnesota with Thielen and with Jefferson at receiver, they're going to be able to make some plays as well, and Cook can do enough on the ground here. We'll see if he's able to do that here against this Chicago defense. They've struggled at times against a good receiving core of the Bears this year. The secondary is solid, but I think this a matchup where Thielen and Jefferson, 2 pretty good receivers that have been able to do damage against above average defenses at times this year, should be able to have a little bit of success in this game. The Bears side has been bet down. I don't think I could take Chicago now at +3 after they opened +6, but the total is definitely something that has piqued my interest here in this game. I would look with the Bears and the Vikings to go over 47 in this one. Jacksonville, Baltimore. We've got Baltimore 12.5, 13-point home favorites, 47.5 the total. Baltimore, obviously, this is not the kind of spot I'm in love with laying 13 with Baltimore. They're coming off the huge Monday night win, and what a game that was. I mean, that was a classic. It was an epic. It was back and forth. It was entertaining. It was dramatic. It was tension. It point spread shenanigans with the safety, which gave Baltimore the point spread cover, and a horrible beat if you had Cleveland +3 in that Monday night football game. That game had everything. And the Ravens found a way. Lamar Jackson leaves the game with what we think are the shits, the cramps, whatever you want to call it. He called it. I like how he said, I just had some cramping, like physical cramping, like it wasn't, stomach cramping. I think it was stomach cramping, but he just didn't want to say it publicly, which maybe if I was in his shoes, I'd probably do the same, but I don't want to. I went to the can. I went to the toilet. I had diarrhea. I had the shits. Is he really going to say that on national television? No, probably not. But I have a feeling that's actually what he had in that game against Cleveland. But he comes back, and what a time to come back, because Trace McSorley, no relation to Marty McSorley, by the way, the hockey enforcer, but he had to come into the game in the fourth quarter, and the Baltimore offense was stagnated, didn't do anything. And Lamar Jackson, it's like, here he comes to save the day, rescue the team, comes back on the field, and the first play is a throw all the way down the field to Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown for the touchdown. And that's a Lamar Jackson that hadn't thrown the ball well at all. Most of the damage was with him running the football throughout that game against Cleveland. He comes in off the sideline and makes that huge play to Brown in the passing game. And sure enough, that bolsters Baltimore toward the victory against Cleveland. So we'll have to wait and see. Look, Cleveland, obviously last week, secondary was banged up. Lamar Jackson, to me, should be able to do a lot of damage here in this one. Jacksonville's got just a ton of injuries in their secondary in particular. The problem for Baltimore is the receiving core is a little patchwork, but he still has a good matchup here. The run defense for Jacksonville is just awful. It is absolutely brutal to watch this team try to stop the run. Look at what Derrick Henry did last week, 200 on the ground last week for the Titans against this Jacksonville run defense. So this definitely should be a matchup where Jacksonville has their share of success running the football, or Baltimore rather, and Lamar Jackson have their share of success running the football. The question is, what do you get from Jacksonville? Because the Mike Glennon experiment is over. Doug Marrone, who's clearly not going to be back next year, he knows it. This is it for him. It's going to be back to Gardner Minshew at quarterback here in this game for the Jacksonville Jaguars. We'll have to wait and see on that. I think they can move the ball a little bit on Baltimore because you start to look at it. Baker Mayfield was just firing on this Baltimore secondary, and they suffered significant cornerback depletion from injuries on Monday night against the Browns. Gardner Minshew in this game, can he, we've seen this guy capable at times. I mean, he's been inconsistent, but there's some real major concerns with Baltimore's defense here. I mean, you can see it. They were just hanging on for dear life at the end of the game against Cleveland because they were just losing bodies left and right on the defensive side of the football. Look at the injuries for Baltimore on defense going into this game on Sunday. You've got just a ton of them. You've got Khalil Dorsey. You've got Terrell Bonds. You've got Amon Marshall. You've got Jimmy Smith back to questionable again. Tramon Williams didn't play Monday Night Football. That's a concern. Tavon Young in that secondary banged up as well. A couple of safeties also for the Baltimore Ravens. That's a concern. They did get the good news, Calais Campbell back in the last game, but certainly key injuries, multiple players in that secondary that left that game due to injury. Will they be ready to go on Sunday? That's a big question mark. You know what? It might allow Jacksonville to hang within a huge number here. This is for a potentially injury-riddled secondary going into this game. That's a lot of points to be laying in a spot where for Baltimore, this could be an exhale spot. Look at the schedule for Baltimore the last couple of games. You played Tennessee, you played Pittsburgh, you played Dallas, but that was in a primetime game. I know Dallas is not good this year, but it was still a quote-unquote big game with a lot of eyeballs on it because it was on a Tuesday night. And then you played another division game against Cleveland, Monday Night Football, a thriller down to the wire. This is clearly not the spot I'm looking to lay 13 with Baltimore. Can I trust Jacksonville? That's the question. And can I trust them offensively? Can I trust the mustache man, Gardner Minshew, offensively here in this game? James Robinson, obviously, I think he's got a chance to bounce back here. Let's not forget, Cleveland ran the ball pretty well against Baltimore. We think of Baltimore as a good run defense. Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt had a really good game against that Baltimore front seven running the football. Maybe James Robinson can have more of the same. The good news is DJ Chark and Laviska Shenault have had injury absences at times the last few weeks. Both of them are finally healthy at the same time and should be available for Gardner Minshew and the Jaguars in this game. And those are their top two receivers for sure, DJ Chark and Laviska Shenault. So this is a game where I would look over at 47. We've already seen this total bet up from 46 to 47, 47 and a half where it is right now. That definitely makes some sense to me because Baltimore, when they've got their full complement and their full defense healthy, they can probably go out there and give Jacksonville trouble. But their defense, the way it is right now, there's just so many players that may be out, and if they do play, they may not be at 100% in this game, that you do have to give the over some consideration. And from a purely spot perspective, for me, I could only back the Jaguars here at this plus 13 number. Next up, San Francisco, Dallas. San Fran minus 2.5 to 3-point road favorites, 45 the total in this game. This number looks really cheap on San Francisco. I know the Niners have had a tough season, not the season they hoped for, disappointing in a lot of different aspects. The injury situation certainly hasn't helped this football team. But aren't they good enough to just beat Dallas in a price range where if they win the game, they should cover the number as well? I'm definitely interested in San Francisco here, -3 at Dallas. We know Dallas hasn't been very good at home for the last few years. The problem is I'm not really very, very impressed at all with Nick Mullins lately. This guy he's gotten a lot of negative criticism, and rightfully so. He was terrible against Washington. I don't think he was that good against Buffalo. When they started to pad the scoreboard with points, it was after Buffalo had already had a big lead. They let their foot off the gas pedal, and that's when Mullins and the 49ers offense started to get things going. Before that, they didn't do a whole lot, and they weren't keeping pace with Allen. And then last week, it was just brutal for Mullins. That was an unforgivable pick six that he threw. Okay, you're in the game. He would just basically, yeah, there you go. There's the Washington player. Take the football, please. And he just threw it right at him. There wasn't even a receiver within 5 yards. It was a hideous decision. It was an even worse throw, and it was a dagger of a play. It's really what swung the game completely in Washington's favor last week against San Francisco. It's just the kind of mistakes you can't make, period, at the quarterback spot. You can't make throws like that. And Nick Mullins, unfortunately, did that. And, that's the concern. At what point, if you're Kyle Shanahan, do you at least try to give C.J. Beathard, at least a shot here at quarterback, because is he really any worse than Mullins at this point? Yet Kyle Shanahan's been sticking with Nick Mullins, and it at least appears that even after just an awful game against Washington last week, that Kyle Shanahan is going to remain with Nick Mullins as his quarterback. And that's the one little pause I have in wanting to back San Francisco here in this game. The good news for Nick Mullins here is, you have played Buffalo, you have played the Rams, you have played Washington, your last three starts. Those are, I think, above average defenses, all three. Bills, Washington, especially Washington's defense lately, which is coming on like a freight train, and the Rams defense. I think they're all above average NFL defenses, those teams. Dallas ain't, all right? Dallas is going to be by far the weakest defense for Nick Mullins that he's seen in probably about a month. So this has to be a spot where even he can avoid some mistakes against this team and be able to move the football. It does bother me that Deebo Samuel injured again. That tells you all you need to know about the kind of year it's been for the Niners. He got injured early in the game last week against Washington. Hamstring strain injury, out for the rest of the season. So that's been the kind of year it's been essentially for Deebo Samuel. They still do have Brandon Ayuk, who's come on strong, Kendrick Bourne, Richie James, Trent Taylor, River Craycraft's actually made some catches, Jordan Reed, the tight end. There's enough weapons there for San Francisco. Look, Dallas, very nice win for them against Cincinnati, but Cincinnati couldn't hang on to the football. Cincinnati was totally inept offensively in that game. And Dallas, despite the win, you're going to look at, wow, Dallas pretty good last week, right? Despite the win, they actually got outgained in total yardage by the Bengals last week in that victory. So I don't want to overreact too much. San Francisco is still going to be a whole hell of a lot tougher of a team to beat, I should say, than Cincinnati was. So right now I'm leaning a little bit toward San Francisco here, -3. The total for, I don't have a strong feel on the total here because I still think San Fran's defense is playing pretty decently. And again, they played Buffalo, they played Washington. Dallas's offense is just, they have the potential with Andy Dalton and Zeke Elliott and Cooper and Gallup and CeeDee Lamb to be very good. But then they have those games where they struggle a bit too. And it's usually been against some solid enough defenses. And Robert Saleh, who is going to clearly be a head coach, I think, next year, he's deserved it because the Niners have consistently had a pretty good defense. All right, they had one really lousy defensive game, San Francisco, the last few weeks, the Buffalo game. But that's Josh Allen. That's a very good Bills offense. Sue them. Sue them for one really, really poor defensive game when they really haven't had that many. So I'm leaning San Francisco here right now, -3 against Dallas. All right, we're down to the late games now on Sunday. I already said Jets-Rams. Jets-Rams, we talked about that earlier in the show. That is actually a late game, 4:05 p.m. Eastern. I accidentally included it with the early games. So we're going to go to the next late game, Philadelphia, Arizona. Arizona, 6.5-point home favorites, 49.5 the total. I saw Donnie Seymour in the chat earlier. I got a bone to pick with him. He said this Eagles problem was offensive line related, play calling related, receiver skill position group. Those were the bigger issues. It wasn't the quarterback. And sure enough, there's Jalen Hurts in his first start, looking pretty competent at least, against one of the best defenses in the NFL last week, the New Orleans Saints. So now what do we think? Do we think now all of a sudden maybe Carson Wentz wasn't very good? Maybe he was more to blame. I don't know. I also don't want to go crazy with just, here's Jalen Hurts, the future quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles. It's one game. And let's also keep in mind the circumstances. Saints have the Chiefs next week. Not the greatest of spots for the Saints by any stretch of the imagination last week. I think they were flat as a pancake in the first half. And then in the second half, you saw them play a lot better on defense against Jalen Hurts. We'll see how it goes here for him. Second start now, going on the road against Arizona. But the one thing I definitely noticed, and the one thing I will give the Eagles credit for, is I saw a lot more energy. I saw a lot more excitement from this team. Body language was so much better. There was chatter on the sideline. All of those little things you look at, is a team still mentally are they still mentally invested in their season? All of a sudden I saw that from the Philadelphia Eagles last week. And that makes them potentially a live dog here, getting 6.5, 7. It's not like Arizona's a trustworthy, significant favorite these days. Arizona's had their issues. Damn impressive against the Giants. I will say that last week for Arizona. Kyler Murray looked probably the best he's played in a good amount of time. He's had that lingering shoulder injury for a long period of time. That's certainly been a hindrance for him offensively. He has also been less willing to run with the football. He finally was able to do that a little bit last week, that he was finally able to run the football. And sure enough, he just, with his legs and his feet and his running ability, he run amok against the Giants last week. And here's the problem for Philly. This is not a good linebacking core at all, and they're ravaged with injuries there. They have been all season. This is a spot where I think Kyler Murray can absolutely make hay running the football. And I think his over rushing yards prop, which really for a few weeks there hadn't been cashing, I think it cashes here. I think this is probably a good matchup for his running ability against this Eagles linebacking core, which ain't good. The Eagles already struggling against the pass, and now they're down 2 corners, Darius Slay, Rodney McLeod, to injury last week. McLeod's done for the season. Slay is done for at least this game. So Murray can run it. Murray can probably throw it. The matchup is Arizona to me. But the intangibles with Philadelphia, with them clearly getting a spark, like it or not, agree with the quarterback change or not, it did spark the Philadelphia Eagles last week, Jalen Hurts being in there. And I saw such a significantly more intense, passionate, solid effort from this team than they had given anybody before that. So that's the dilemma for me. The intangibles and the price being where it's at point to Philly. But the matchup to me is one that Arizona should dictate here. Defense for Arizona, you wonder what they can do against this new look, maybe improve Philly offense. But I do think Arizona's offense is going to do damage here. So maybe I make a case over the total in this game. It's 47.5. It's gone up to 49.5. I agree, especially with Slay and Leonard out. You've got a banged up linebacking core and a banged up secondary against Arizona, when you've got to worry about Nuke Hopkins, you got to worry about Kyler Murray's ability as well to run with the football. That's going to be some trouble, I think, for this Eagles defense going into this game. Eagles defense played pretty solid last week in the upset win against the Saints. But again, Taysom Hill, with all due respect, who's been serviceable for the Saints, ain't going to be the explosiveness and the type of playmakers and the type of quarterback play that specifically quarterback play. I shouldn't say that. Saints have playmakers, but the quarterback play, to me, is going to be significant, much bigger upgrade facing Kyler Murray as opposed to facing Taysom Hill for this Eagles defense. So I do like over the total here in this game. If I had to pick a side, I'd lean slightly to Philly because of the energy and adrenaline they showed last week with Hurts in his first start. But for me, the over is the thing I feel a little bit stronger about in this game. Next one is obviously the big one. We're all looking forward to it. Potential Super Bowl preview. Jim Nantz and Tony Romo. Late game on Sunday. CBS, Kansas City, New Orleans. We've got the Chiefs, 3-point road favorites in the Superdome, 51.5 the total in this game. It's a great game to watch. I don't know if it's a great game to bet. I mean, do you really want to go against Kansas City laying only 3? That's Kansas City struggled to cover numbers. And in fact, Kansas City comes into this game 0-5 ATS their last 5 games. They didn't cover against Miami, won by 6. They didn't cover against Denver, won by 6. They didn't cover against Tampa, won by 3. They didn't cover against Las Vegas, won by 4. They didn't cover against Carolina, they won by 2. They're not winning by margins, but now they're just laying 3. So there's a chance they can win this game and actually cover the number because of the short point spread we're dealing with here in this game. And they've still found ways to win. It hasn't been pretty, but that's why this number is exactly where it should be. -3 New Kansas City is probably was where I'd have this number. It's where it is. It's in a good spot. Certainly, the Saints, for as flat and lethargic as they were in the first half last week against Philly, they aren't going to be that in this game. Not even a maybe. They're going to be coming out firing in this game, and it's the question of, can their defense give Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs offense fits? I got to believe they can, especially with this game in New Orleans, because we saw Kansas City's offense for the first quarter and a half last week against Miami, for most of the game the week before against Denver, contained Kansas City's offense. Patrick Mahomes had multiple interceptions in the first half last week against Miami. Things we're not used to seeing from him. Denver held this Kansas City offense in check a couple of weeks ago. Why can't New Orleans, who's been one of the best defenses in the NFL for the last month or so? It's obviously an incredible offensive football team, the Chiefs, with the weapons, with the offensive line, with Mahomes' ability to throw short passes, intermediate, deep balls, run with the football, have a very creative run game with Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Le'Veon Bell. They can run it with those two guys. They can use them in the screen game and as pass-catching running backs. There's just so much that Andy Reid and another future NFL head coach, the offensive coordinator of this Kansas City team, Eric Bieniemy, there's so much they can do with this offense that it's absolutely scary when you are asked to try to stop them. But I think the Saints have the pass rush. The Saints have finally, Marshawn Lattimore playing better after I don't know what it was early in the season. He was getting burned a couple of times. You're not seeing that quite as much now from him in that New Orleans secondary. I think they got a chance to keep Kansas City, at least neutralize them a little bit. You're never going to shut them down completely, but neutralize them a little bit. I think that's possible. Question is, what do you get from Taysom Hill here? There's now multiple starts he's made, and I find the more he's playing, the less impactful he's been. More film on him, more of an idea for opposing defenses, what to expect when you play on Taysom Hill in this New Orleans offense. I'm going to assume he's starting here. I know there's been some rumblings, and for the last couple of weeks, the Chiefs have been, or the Saints rather, have been expecting Drew Brees to be ready to go for this game, this showdown against Kansas City, this potential Super Bowl preview. But now Sean Payton's kind of backtracking, saying we may give Drew Brees another week here to rehabilitate and be able to return. And they also want him healthy for the playoffs. As much as this is a big regular season game, it's not that be-all, end-all game. And I think that's what Sean Payton sees and maybe trying to hold out Drew Brees here for one more week. Saints should be able to move the ball, though, because, Tua and the Dolphins did have some success. Michael Thomas has really, really come on strong lately. Emmanuel Sanders, Jared Cook, of course, Alvin Kamara, Latavius Murray, and him in particular. That Kamara-Latavius Murray combo should be able to run against the Chiefs, who have all of a sudden had trouble stopping the run a little bit the last few weeks, Kansas City. So that's definitely been something that concerns me going into this game here. It's really, really tough. I think if I had gotten 3.5 or 4 with the Saints here, I'd be on New Orleans. Now that it's 3 across the board, I'd still lean New Orleans because at least you get the 3. If they lose by a field goal, you push. I think the Saints can match up well enough with Kansas City and Mahomes on the defensive side of the football here. And I think, again, they can run the football because Kansas City's defense has kind of had troubles up front, stopping the run. And you've got as good a tandem as there is in the NFL with Alvin Kamara and Latavius Murray running the football for the Saints. So I do have a lean to the Saints. 3 or better, I would look New Orleans before I look Kansas City. And you've got that added element of New Orleans just chomping at the bit, a loss that didn't sit well with them against Philadelphia last week. And I do think lately the better defense has been New Orleans. So I'm going to lean to the Saints here, +3 in this game against Kansas City. As far as the total goes, 51.5. This could actually stay under, but I don't have the guts to bet an under with Mahomes and the Chiefs. I haven't bet a Kansas City game under the total yet this year. I don't think I'm going to start now. So a lean for me to the Saints here, getting 3 as a home underdog. All right, let's go to Sunday Night Football. Cleveland Browns, New York Giants. In this one, we've got the Browns 4.5 to 5-point road favorites, 44 the total in this game. Obviously, the big question mark for the Giants coming into this one is Daniel Jones. Is he going to be ready to go at quarterback here for this game? He's limited on practice. The hamstring and the ankle still bothering him. So he's got a pair of injuries right now. He's got a right hamstring that kept him out. And then he sprained his left ankle last Sunday for the Giants against Arizona. So he's got a couple of different, this isn't one injury. This is 2 injuries. It's a right hamstring and a left ankle sprain right now. It's a right hamstring injury and it's a left ankle sprain. 2 different injuries, one on each side of his body, one on each leg right now for Daniel Jones. So it's really, really tough here for this Giant, for him, I think, to start in this game. And if it's Colt McCoy at quarterback, I'm not backing the Giants because, and believe it or not, the Giants won the game Colt McCoy started, but it had nothing to do with Colt McCoy, nothing at all. The defense swarmed Seattle. It was a out of this world defensive effort from the New York Giants to win that game against the Seattle Seahawks with Colt McCoy at quarterback. I don't think I trust McCoy in this game either against the Browns. The flip side of this is, as much as I wouldn't want to back the Giants with Colt McCoy, and that's why I think Cleveland money's come in. Cleveland, really, really tough loss in a short week, an emotional game, an exhausting game, a physical game, an emotional roller coaster against Baltimore on Monday Night Football in that epic thriller. And now you got to come back on a short week, go on the road and try to bounce back. Oh, and not only do you have to win, you got to win by margin as well in this game. So it's a lot of moving parts on both sides here. I'm not involved in the game. I doubt I bet this game. But right now it's just I would want to see if Daniel Jones is in. If Daniel Jones is in, I might lean Giants here in this game. But I need Jones in there, plain and simple. And the Giants defense kind of reverted back to some of their early season struggles last week. They've been really starting to play well. We'll see if they can hang in there against Baker Mayfield, a really balanced offense. I am liking what I'm seeing from this Cleveland offense more and more, even in the loss last week. Like, they pretty much matched Baltimore point for point, but they just didn't get a stop here when they needed it here. So, Jones, we'll see if he's back. Colt McCoy behind a shaky offensive line. At least with Jones, he's got a little mobility and dexterity. I don't have that with McCoy, with an offensive line for the Giants that struggles at times to protect. So for me, it's a pass for now. I might get myself toward the Giants side, though, if Daniel Jones is able to go on Sunday Night Football. All right, we'll wrap it up with Monday Night Football to end this edition of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy. Thanks to everyone in the chat. Great turnout. 20 people watching live. Everyone in the chat. Chris, Robert, James, Pie Guy, Joey, Bloodthirsty MMA, Donnie checked in briefly, MMA Locker Room, Clint from Die Hard MMA Podcast, all of you guys, thanks for watching. We'll wrap it up with Pittsburgh, Cincinnati. We've got the Steelers 13-point road favorites here, 40 the total in this game. This is another one. Unfortunately, the 2 primetime games from a side and total perspective, not necessarily rushing to bet either one. Pittsburgh certainly, 2 straight losses now. Washington and Buffalo, extra time to prepare with this being Monday Night Football. Cincinnati looks terrible. If Pittsburgh's even plays a solid game, solid football game on both sides of the ball. If Ben Roethlisberger stops making mistakes and is a little bit more accurate, can they run the football finally? Can the offensive line do a better job? If they can get something out of this offense, which has clearly declined the last few weeks, they can probably win by 2 touchdowns or more. Let's put it this way. I wouldn't want Cincinnati. Pittsburgh already destroyed this team, a couple of weeks ago, or a few weeks ago, actually more like a month ago in Pittsburgh, 36-10, they beat Cincinnati. I wouldn't trust the Bengals here, and regardless of who's at quarterback, because I don't like either option. Doesn't matter to me at this point whether it's Ryan Finley or Brandon Allen. Neither one is very good. And Brandon Allen is back to being questionable again. And to be honest with you, and he's not practicing today, Ryan Finley might be even worse than Brandon Allen at quarterback for this Bengals team. Absolutely worse. Yeah, I would not want to back Cincinnati really with Finley, and I probably don't want to back them with Allen either, but Finley would be worse option. And say what you will about Pittsburgh's offense struggling a bit, the defense is still pretty good. They have had linebacker issues, and I mentioned that last week against Buffalo, and I thought Buffalo would exploit that, and they did exploit that. Devin Bush and Bud Dupree and Robert Spillane and Vince Williams, that were 4 regulars in the linebacking core for the Steelers who didn't play last week against the Buffalo Bills on that Sunday night football game. Will they get any of those players back for this game? That is the big significant question. And if they do, and if they get healthier at the linebacker spot, they could have a field day. And the Cincinnati Bengals offensive line, look, the offensive line for the Bengals, to gauge how they might perform against this Pittsburgh defense, the Cincinnati offensive line last week had trouble blocking Dallas's defense. That piss poor sieve, unable to stop me and a bunch of people in the chat right now on the defensive side of the football. If we wanted to run the football against Dallas, if we wanted to catch a few passes against Dallas's defense this season, I think we all could. That Dallas defense at times got immense pressure on Cincinnati quarterbacks last week. Yeah, that is a major red flag now going into this game against Pittsburgh here. So, yeah, I don't want the Bengals here. It's a lot of points. I understand the Steelers are in a bit of a funk. They're in a little bit of a malaise. Got the injuries at linebacker. The passing receivers are dropping passes left and right. Ben Roethlisberger's not been as sharp the last few weeks. They've got issues, and they can't run the ball. I mean, James Conner's not running the ball well. Jalen Samuels and Benny Snell aren't necessarily guys I trust to run the ball successfully either. They got problems. They got issues. But even with those issues, they might just be able to take the field and win by 2 touchdowns right now against Cincinnati, because it's just ugly. All sorts of ugly for the Bengals right now on offense. You look at the Bengals the last few weeks, 20-9 loss to Washington, 19-7 loss to Miami, 30-7 loss to Dallas last week. The only point spread cover in their last 5 games was the 19-17 loss to the Giants, and they needed a backdoor touchdown in the final minute or two just to cover that point spread. So, yeah, I mean, even with Pittsburgh's issues, I would only look to the big road favorite here with the Pittsburgh Steelers in this game. And I don't think they're ever going to be in a situation where they're not interested in laying a beat down on Cincinnati. They've laid a bunch of ass whippings on Cincinnati over the years, including the 36-10 win against Cincinnati earlier this season. So for me, it would be Pittsburgh or pass. Don't know if I pull the trigger on the Steelers, but leaning at least in that direction for Monday Night Football. All right, so there we go. We've gotten through every NFL Week 15 game on the card. I'll just recap what I'm looking at for either bets or potential bets for this card. Buffalo, Denver, liking the over in that game with a lean to Denver plus the points. Carolina, Green Bay, I like Carolina plus 8.5, and I like over 51.5 in that game on Saturday night. We move to Sunday in the NFL. I've got my eye on Houston, Indianapolis over 51 in that game, especially if Darius Leonard and Xavier Rhodes don't play for the Colts. Jets and Rams, haven't bet it, may not, but I'll lean for me to the Rams in the first half, and a smaller lean on them in the full game as well against the Jets. Tampa Bay -6, lean with them against Atlanta. New England plus the points against Miami. That's a lean for me there. If Dwayne Haskins is quarterback, I will be pulling the trigger on Seattle, -5. If Alex Smith is the quarterback, I actually might bet Washington +5. But again, very much dependent on the quarterback. I absolutely will be on Chicago, Minnesota over. Someone in the chat mentioned what would my best bet be. I don't have a best bet right now, but as of this point in time, I actually think Chicago, Minnesota might be my strongest feel or strongest opinion on this card right now. Bears, Vikings over 47. Bears playing much faster tempo. Bears getting some things done on offense the last few weeks. Defensively, Minnesota's not good, and they're banged up, and Eric Kendricks may not play again. And I think Kirk Cousins and Dalvin Cook and the passing and the run game can do enough against Chicago's defense to, especially in Minnesota, where they can put some points on the board. So that's the one that stands out to me most of all right now is Bears Vikings over 47. Jacksonville, Baltimore. I lean slightly to Jacksonville, but I like the over especially. Baltimore really banged up on defense. They should be able to run amok on Jacksonville. I think we get over 47.5 with the Jags and the Ravens. Cleveland and the Giants, I'm passing right now on that game. I would only look maybe to the Giants if Daniel Jones plays. Philly, Arizona, leaning to the over. Actually, I will be on the over here. I think I like that overplay. 49, over 49 with Philadelphia, Arizona. Kansas City, New Orleans, just a lean for now to the Saints, +3 in that big showdown with the Chiefs and the Saints. San Francisco, Dallas, lean San Francisco, -3. And Monday Night Football. Pittsburgh, Cincinnati right now leaning toward the Steelers, but again, haven't decided whether I'll be pulling the trigger on a bet with the Steelers in that game. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. That's a wrap for Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy for Thursday, December 17th, the Week 15 edition in the National Football League. Make sure you're tuning into Pub Sports Radio and the YouTube channel. There's tons of great content. Razor sharp picks doing horse live betting shows at night and doing a really good job with that. The MMA crew, Mo and Slaughter and everybody associated with that show. Boston Nick MMA, I still call him Mr. Fat Fist, his original nickname. They're doing great work with the UFC. Support those shows. Keep watching this channel. I'll be back with you this weekend, Saturday, Sunday, college football and NFL closing time show. Looking forward to that. Have a great weekend. Good luck with all of your bets in NFL Week 15 action. Thanks for watching Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy. And as always, I'll be back with you right here on this show next Thursday, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, for another edition of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy. Thanks for watching, everybody. Enjoy the game.